This is the 2-in-2 sign that I use for the Christmas light show. It's pretty straightforward. It's a scrap piece of plywood that you see here and some old pallet wood on both sides. And then I have another piece of scrap wood that's up here at the top. And that basically forms the 2-in-2 sign. I painted the sign with some red exterior paint. So that's what you see here. And as you saw before, I previously had the stranded Christmas lights before upgrading to this LED strip here on there. And so the LED strip is much more even and gives better lighting, in my opinion, than these Christmas lights. Now, don't get me wrong, the Christmas string lights do work, but the light was not as bright as I would like it to be. And so I went ahead and upgraded to these since I did have a bunch left over from another project. These are exterior rated Christmas lights. Excuse me, these are exterior rated LED lights. As you see here, made in China, 120 volt AC or 220 volt for the European. And it does have a controller, and I'll show you that controller on the back here. But I have a whole bunch, like I bought, I believe it was 1,000 feet. I could be wrong. And so it may not be 1,000 feet. I'm not even sure how many feet it is. But they come on this spool, which is this right here, which you saw earlier. And you end up with that. So these are 110 volt DC LEDs, and I know 110 volt DC, yeah, they're high voltage DC LEDs. They have the built-in resistors built into the strip here that brings it down to whatever voltage that the LEDs actually need, but the output from the transformer is 110 volt DC. To get the lettering and the radio station frequency on here, I created a stencil and basically went into like PowerPoint or Microsoft Word or something similar and put the lettering in that, printed out the sheets of paper, and then put it over here. I then transferred that to a cardboard stencil, and then I used the cardboard stencil to paint this here. And as you see, there is some overspray on the lettering, but I said if I ever had to change the frequency, I would redo everything on here. So basically paint it again with another color of red, and then use the white spray paint to do the stencil again. All right, and on the ends here, I have these furring strips, and this is what I had on hand. Ideally, you would not use this, and ideally, you would also probably consider painting this if you were to do it. But I had these on hand, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna just use those as ground stakes. So that's why the bottom half of these are dirty, because they're normally in the ground when the sign is in use. All right, and on the back, it's a little bit difficult here. So this is the generic LED controller that comes with these lights. Actually, I had the original controller I used somewhere else, so I bought a second controller with that goes with these lights. And you plug in the end of the wire or the LED strip into this connector here, and it has some pins that you stick in to both ends to make that connection go across there. And you're supposed to seal this end up here so that none of this backs out. Ideally with like a silicone or whatnot. I may end up having to take this back off now that I see that this is starting to back out, maybe from too much stress on here. But this does have a remote control that it came with, so you can change the colors. Something happened at some point when I was testing everything out, and it shorted somewhere in here. Like I saw it short, it popped, and there's still a little burn mark in there. But now this LED controller, it still puts out the correct amount of voltage so that the LEDs work. However, it does not allow you to change colors. So it's stuck on white for some reason. And if I were to take this apart, which I will show you really quickly, this is not a serviceable controller. And I'm gonna show you why it is not serviceable. And so it's just 2 screws on the side here. Probably shouldn't have used a drill on that, but that's what's right here next to me. Oh crap, okay. All right, so if we slide this out, this controller is designed to be used outdoors. So it does have an outdoor rating, but what they do is they put this, I don't know what this is. It's like silicone wax, something in here to cover up all the circuits. So you can't diagnose this thing. Like if something in here were to pop, you would have to figure out how to get this thing out of here. But because it's got all this silicone gel, whatever, I don't even know what this stuff is. And it's kind of solid. It's a little bit spongy. It feels like silicone, but it may or may not be. But you would have to get all of that out. And I'm assuming the control board is at the bottom of this. That being said, this is rated for outdoor, so I will be using it in outdoor capacity. I may seal up these edges here and here to give it further weatherproofing, but for the most part, it is weatherproofing. But something happened with this shorting out, and I'm assuming something on here blowed or burned up, and it does not respond to requests from the remote to change the colors on the LED. Now, why is that? I don't know. Like I say, can't take it apart to service it, so I don't know what's wrong with it. But that's it. But as you see here, it is a input of 110 default, 110 AC volts, output 110 DC volts with a maximum of 1,000 watts. So follow this first set of lines here. In America, we do not have the 230 volt system as our primary set of voltages. So we do use 110 or 120, the 110 to 120 range. And other places, they use the 230 to 240 range. All right. And so that is the Tune 2 sign at its very basicness. Pretty much, I didn't pay too much for any of this because most of this stuff was scrap. I did pay for the controller, and I did have like the paint and the wood on hand as scrap. And of course I had these screws here, which may take out at some point. Had those on hand. So I really didn't have to put much money into this to get that Tune 2 sign made.